Welcome to episode 21 of the Avert Your Eyes Podcast, where we talk with some of the most creative people within North Texas and beyond. I'm your host, Michael Gibson Jr. I hope that you enjoyed your 4th of July holiday, and if you don't celebrate, I hope that you enjoyed your Tuesday. I want to let you know of a few things. First, if you love film as much as I do, I want to let you know about the 16th Annual Asian Film Festival of Dallas, which is right around the corner. This year's festival is taking place July 13th through the 20th of 2017 at the Angelica Film Center in Dallas. They'll be featuring films from all across the world, and this is hands down one of my favorite events of the year. And I even served as a judge a few years ago. You can learn more by visiting AsianFilmDallas.com for tickets and more information. Last month was very busy for myself, as I've been doing some pre-production on a short film with some friends of mine. We'll be ramping up into actual production very shortly, and I hope to be able to give you more information about that at a later date. But I also want to let you know, although it took me almost a year, last week I was able to talk a past guest of mine on the podcast, Lauren Brizendine, into attending an open mic with me at the Arlington Improv, and she did an amazing job. I was very honored to share in her first experience with her, and I will have to catch up with her for the podcast, and so that she can share her experience and what else that she's been up to lately. As we get back into this episode, no, your eyes and ears did not deceive you. This episode's guest is Russ Sharek. He's a professional clown and the creative director of the Circus Freaks, if you were listening back to episodes 20 and episode 6, which was the first time that he was on the show. They have a show that's aptly called This Show that, as I'm recording this right now, they just finished their first show on July 7th. They still have 2 more shows coming up, July 8th and 9th at the Margo Jones Theatre at Fair Park. You can find tickets by visiting circusfreaks.org. And I've actually got my tickets. I'm actually going to be going tomorrow, for me as I'm recording this, which will be July 8th. So looking very much forward to seeing the show. And a little behind the scenes, I usually only chat with my guests for roughly an hour, but we kept the mic on at the end of what was supposed to be episode 20 for this podcast. We ended up talking for 3.5 hours. Episode 20 was that first hour, and I was planning on giving out little snippets because he said some very interesting things, and I wanted to share them with y'all, and I was planning on doing them as little snippets, but the more I started listening to it and editing, I decided, you know what, I'm just going to condense it down to another hour for you. So this second hour of our conversation is a major cut down of the remaining 2+ hours. And we talk about performing, anxiety, and he tells a very beautiful story about how the Circus Freaks actually came together. For episode 21 of the Avert Your Eyes Podcast, consider yourself warned.
I think one of the things that I've really enjoyed, I mean, the 2 times we got together, and the last time I think we were funnier and showing off a little.
Yeah.
But this is nice because I really enjoy getting a chance. Most people, when they talk to me about the work I do, it's from a place of, well, it's either the worst place, which is the skills, and they go, well, show me the juggling and show me this and show me the unicycle. And it's like, you know what? Hire me if you want to see that.
Right.
And that's actually less and less what I do for a living. I sort of came real quickly to the conclusion that while I have some skills and I do use them, they're not the focus of my work at all. Creatively, there are other things that fuel me. And then they want to talk jokes, so they want to hear the bad stories of the circus, or they want to hear that, or they want to hear, that stuff. But very rarely do we talk about like sort of the philosophic stuff. And then what I love about getting to talk to you is that that's where we seem to go, is in this really sort of heady stuff. And, when we're working, there are hours of conversation about the philosophy and metaphor behind this work and how and how heavy and complex it can be, because the clown is in many ways the
here and in here.
We say we're the jugglers of human emotion.
Yeah.
That's the job. So on one level, you have to be following your impulses and completely responsive to everything. On another level, you have to be driving in the back to guide you towards whatever the material is, whatever the point is, whatever's the next thing coming. And you have to be sensitive to the room.
Yes.
And all of these things are going on, and somewhere in there, when you realize you can generate all these feelings, and it's really the audience's job to feel them, but you're generating all these feelings, you start to feel a little like a sociopath. And so you have long conversations, I think, which are really engineered to mollify that feeling. I think really the long conversations are to justify and mollify that thing. Most of what I have been learning and what scares me most is much of what I've learned about the classic sort of theatrical clown is when you take away the tools of theater, what they're doing is the work of the shaman. They're really, and of course there's a whole branch of clown that really gets into that, and mask work, which, actually theatrical mask is that's a whole world of its own. And I'm a little terrified of that again because of that woo-woo statement, because I like to think of that I have at least one foot in reality, and the more you dip into that work, the less you feel connected. And you have to understand, there's a big difference between exploring that work and being high as a kite and doing this with a real seasoned, clear, sober mind. And I'm not judging anyone that's how they find their path. I'm simply saying, when I go in and do some of this work and, you achieve something that starts seeming like a really altered state where you're looking at the world differently, you realize the last time I felt this way, I was a teenager and I was high as a kite. You go, weird stuff in the human brain and the human shared consciousness, and I need to go lay under furniture because it scares the crap out of me. So I think the part of playing and getting to talk like this is fun, because that's the stuff you never get to say.
Right.
You never get to walk out in front of a room full of people and say, hi, I'm actually, I'm a philosopher that juggles just enough to keep his job. And the truth of my job is that I'm finding more and more when someone understands what I do for a living, as opposed to, come and be this or come and be that, come walk on stilts, whatever. I come with a suitcase full of props, and my brain full and my heart full of being of skill. My brain full of skills, my heart full of being in the moment. And anytime I open the suitcase, I've probably failed. Anytime I open up and grab a prop, I've probably failed. And that's such a weird difference from where I started, which was walking out with, I do a great trick. Come watch me do the trick. Because the truth is, if you went to a party and you met that guy, the guy who goes, I do great tricks, so therefore you should like me, you would think he's a douchebag. Yeah. That's who I'm very proud to not be. But on the other hand, sometimes you have to take a breath and remind people, you have to find the balance out and go, what do you get hired to do? I suppose I juggle and walk on stilts and unicycle and all this crap, but the truth is what I do is, again, it's the emotional stuff. It's the little stuff. It's the making fun.
Out of nothing, too, especially, is when the magic really happens.
The hardest corner in teaching, because I'm working with some baby clowns right now, and I don't mean like they're young. I mean like they're making that, they're in that breakthrough process of finding that part of themselves. And it is your clown is a very unique thing, and I think it's weird because when I used to hear people say that, I'm just like, oh God, shut up. That just sounds so woo-woo. It just sounds so pretentious. But the truth is, you have to call it something. This sort of altered mind, this sort of weird balance point. And so I'm dealing with a lot of people who are finding this. And it's funny, I can hand them something and they can find an hour's worth of material. But I tell you, stand there, do nothing, and find it. It's so hard. I've watched people melt down. I've watched seasoned people. I've melted down trying to do that. But that's where the really most beautiful work is, when they've got nothing and somehow, in a very organic way, they find the play and the pleasure in the moment, the game in the moment. Yeah. And you watch that erupt. That's the stuff I love.
Yeah, we did an exercise in, I think it was like level 3 of improv, where we focused on the character. And people tend to have, when they do improv, have things that they bring to the table.
Was their shtick?
Yeah, absolutely. And so there was an exercise we did where the teacher was like, okay, every 10 seconds you're going to do a character for like 10 seconds, and then I'll say switch. And I think he did it for like 10, come up with 10 characters.
And you're out at about 4.
4 or 5, some maybe like 6, but then like you're stretching. But then like these beautiful moments come out of people.
And I think you're dead right. I think one of the things we deal with is that's a way of hiding.
Yeah.
I brought something, so it's okay. You don't have to look at me. And what I have to do is I have to get people to a place where they can, and I have to get myself to this place too, where I can drop the pretense and just be there. And that is, oh God, it's hard. Yeah. Because what we want to do is we want to say, I do this thing that makes me valid. It's a much different thing to stand there and say, here I am. It's a neat cure. But that's really a lot of where clown differs from a lot of different forms is, improv is about playing off of information. Clown's about complicity. Clown is about being with someone and getting a yes, but then seeing what erupts there, not about building on your thing or my thing. It's about what's here now that we're both here.
Yeah.
And that's it's a delicate little thing. I originally, when I started teaching, I taught improv predominantly. I still do. And I taught improv with a partner, and his background was sketch, and his background was improv, and that sort of work. And a real gamified, this like bar game style improv. Yeah. Nothing, and again, he was very good. And one of the clashes we hit is especially as I was very interested in all of this other stuff, was that is a wonderful suit of armor. And so often the minds that are capable of doing that kind of work are capable of doing so much more beautiful things and dumb and daft and naff and beautiful things. And watching them sort of stumble because they're staying in that little safe spot. My job when I bring them into my lab is the first thing I do is go, oh, there's your safe spot. And I grab them and I yank them over. And they scream a lot, and then I let them go and they fall on the ground. And I go, how did that feel? They went scary as hell. I said, welcome to my world. And then we validate the crap out of them, and then we start again.
Yeah.
I do it's a performance workshop that was what I toured. And what I toured was, we jokingly refer to it as the introduce yourself until you cry game. Essentially, I force people to get to a neutral. Stop all the hiding, the parasitic gesture, all of this stuff we do. And then just be vulnerable for a moment and tell us who you are. And by the time that's done, that process has, and it's a very structured process now, because it had a lot of, we had a general idea of how to do it, and then we got to take it on the road and torture test it a lot. So it's good now. After we have that, everybody in that room is a professional observer of you being real. And then we tell you, come on the stage. And the minute you go to shtick, everyone in the room knows it.
Yes.
And they go, oh, you're full of crap. Stop it. Knock it off. And then you go, but, and you go, and then you come in as the teacher and you say, what's different between the two? And you go, I did this. I go, no, come in again. And then come out again. On. And everybody you watch the whole room full of people who are trained to spot BS now, but also trained to love real. And you go, they don't even think about it. They're so drawn to the truth. And the person on stage goes, oh my God, I feel great. Instead of tense, I feel calm. Why? I said, because you actually showed up. Instead of sending your avatar made of bullshit, you showed up.
And coasting. And sometimes, not even necessarily coasting. I mean, like, that's a part of it too, but, you're just not there.
I realize I did this at first too. And one of the things that we have to train in clown is having nothing and being okay with that. And failing is a thing we have to.
And that's so scary. Even
wow! I had it happen. I have a student of mine. He just did this. He's again, one of the babies. And there's a game I use, and it is difficult to administer. But essentially, it is structured off of a very simple premise to force people to end up in the shit. Okay? To put them in the shit. And by that, I mean that in the very Gaulier sense of put them in a position where they are on the teetering edge of desperation and failure and have to make it sell. And if you do something that is bullshit there, we will know instantly. Because what happens is first you feel that,
Yeah.
and then if you don't find it in the moment, if you dig back and go, oh, I got an idea, we know you're full of crap and we don't like it. But if you do anything honest and in the moment, we go, oh my God, you're a genius. And it doesn't have to be anything.
Yeah.
You know, and that becomes the beautiful thing to watch when someone hits that point, and everyone who is learning, who's a little further past it, sees the sweat break out and this, and they go, you're really doing it now. We know what that feels like. And then the next time they do it, they don't feel as awful.
Yeah.
And then the next time they feel okay. And then the next time they start having ideas and being able to think in that place. And that's what you have to chip away at. And when you chip away at that, suddenly, ooh, they start getting brilliant on stage, but also they're being very real. The funny thing is, if you're doing, clown can stare you in the eye and just hang out there. Audience loves it. I mean, I don't mean to say blankly. I mean to be present and thinking and function. A thing that most people will collapse under the weight of. I know when I first started this work, I had trouble just not looking at the floor. Yeah. Realize, again, I started this off by saying I had a lot of anxiety. I had stage fright when I started this work. I mean, crippling stage fright. I solved that by getting on stage a lot.
And you know what? I think that I need to get back out there too, because I've been off for over a year, not performing improv. I did a couple open mics here and there, way back there in the beginning, but like I ended up doing another one a couple weeks ago before I left for LA, because I was like, you know what? Maybe I should do some out there, and
didn't feel good.
It did not feel good. I was like, all that.
Stand-up's a tough form, too. I'm not a huge fan because it's so negative. That's honestly my biggest problem with stand-up is there are two things about stand-up I hate. It's low denominator, which I don't have a real problem with because I like a good fart joke.
Yeah.
But I hate it when somebody goes, I'm going to say something terrible. Nah, just kidding. That negation just, I just hate you when you, it's like, make a stand. I don't care what it is. I'll even believe it's a character if you do it while wearing a funny hat. But don't stand up there and say something and then negate the statement and deny it.
Right.
Especially if you've gone in order to be funny, gone somewhere nasty. Be brave enough to
own up to it, at least on the stage, because the stage is supposed to be
that place,
the safe place that you can, throw stuff out there. You walk away, you're back out into the world. But when you're there in the theater, you're experiencing a show, and everybody, and so like these people that have to go, even further than that, not just negate, but apologize like after they get off the stage.
Oh, no, hang on. I do that a lot. I've been known to do an amazing show and then at the end find the guy in the front row. Like I run out to the front of the theater and I find the guy in the front row and I go, I want to say thank you and I'm sorry for everything I did.
Well, no, but there's, I mean, with clowning around and stuff like that's one thing, but then like, but people that go out there and like make a definitive statement. And then, like, people are all enraged and stuff.
Oh,
like,
and
you went to see a show. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. So, there's a problem. There's this constant concept in any kind of, and it's not just comedy, but I think it's any kind of performance skill. You, by hitting the stage and presenting an idea, at the very first moment you walk on stage, you've begun to make a promise.
Yes.
And so long as you support the promise, everyone likes the payoff.
Yeah.
The minute you undermine it,
yes,
they will hate you. They will kill you. My suggestion to you is twofold. First of all, go do more.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the way out is through.
Absolutely.
And then the second is, one of the things that most of the people who have studied with me have said is that it's anxiety. I've taught them some tools for anxiety management inadvertently. And that is because in order to being on stage is stressful. So we have to dispense with that and become very comfortable being there. Yeah. And that is a skill of the clown. I really enjoy the stuff I'm doing at the Bathhouse, the Existential Variety Improv Lab. evil.
Yes.
I love the work we've gotten to do there. Oh, it was so fun last month. So we're off for a month because the Festival of Independent Theaters is going on. But last month they had a show up. And what happens is I teach my workshop on the stage. Sometimes they've got it stripped back because they're between shows. Sometimes we move the furniture. But for whatever reason, I walk in there. And I have decided I'm a great artist. And I have decided I want to teach Lecoq's most beautiful improvisation. One I happen to be very emotionally connected to. I'm going to teach the flower. This beautiful, delicate, minimalist exercise where you come and you encounter a flower. Nothing is there but you and the flower. So beautiful. And I walk in, they've decorated this ghetto, trashed out sci-fi set of a bad Star Trek film. On the stage, there's no way my thing's going. And I'm like, I gotta do it. I mean, because, and this is the clown challenge. And I'm like, the class is ruined. Because this exercise doesn't work unless it's stripped down. I'm like, what are we gonna do? And I'm reminded, De Castro would often, her teacher was Gallier, who is, the greatest living. And she would call Gallier and says, I have to teach what I do. And he would go, think! And hang up the phone on her. I mean, she told the story a couple times and it was just like, what a useless fucking thing. And then all of a sudden I heard her say, think! And I went, well, I just need to rewrite the damn exercise. You get rattled out of your freeze of, it's not going to work and it's bad. I go, well, what's the exercise? The premise of the exercise is to do this and there's X, Y, and Z. And where are we? We're in space. Okay. We're in space. And I walk in, I tell everybody, we're in space. If I hear you use pop culture, I will kill you. Because the minute you come up with a pop culture idea is dead. But we all understand what it is to be in science fiction. Yes, everybody says yes. It was 3 hours of some of the best improvised theater I've ever seen. And all of it took place on the set of a spaceship. It was beautiful. Some of it was poignant, heartbreaking. Some of it was hilarious. Some of it was nutty comedy. And it all worked. We had an emotional construct of where we were because everybody understood it. So one of the things I love about Bathhouse is because every time I walk in there, there is the challenge of not just, I don't know what the room is like because I'm a minimalist. I strip it all away. But I walk in onto the set of somebody else's movie and I have to make mine work. And everybody comes with me on that. We have a group of about a dozen people who show up. We all throw money in a cigar box to pay the rent. And we work for 3 hours on little, I usually come with an exercise, but then we deconstruct and we start going, okay, what's working here? What's not working here? Why does not I teach everybody a little something? And by the time it's done, everybody walks away having done some lit up work. And I've seen improvisers come in there and come out broken, but I've also seen them come in and go through and come out tough. I mean, just because they're calm and they have a whole different perspective. They usually fall out, the pure improv people fall out very quickly because the demands of playing games versus the demand of creation is different. And it may not be for them, but not everyone is everyone's teacher. And then I've seen some people I just got a couple of new students and so it's a good time to show up because they're new. And they're killing it. One of them is a girl, she showed up her husband. He's a theater guy, and he wants to get back into it. He was a theater guy. And she wanted to learn to play better D&D. She's killer. She's probably the best in the room right now. She's got great instincts. She's terrified, though, but she's great instincts. You can teach anxiety management, throwing people on stages. Yeah. And I used to be real big on, get up there and don't think. See if you can shock treatment yourself into being good. And I did it for a little while, and the idea was to get people out of their rigid patterns. And it was experimental, and I had learned some guerrilla theater stuff, and I was exploring that. What I found it's an unrealistic simulation of the theatrical experience. Yeah. There is no equation where you're going to get on stage when you're not ready. Right. Now, I used to run a variety show where we had a thing where you didn't know you were up until it was the late at night. After the curated show, we did a late night portion we had everybody's name on a list and we randomized. And we would call people up in order and try to curate a show on the fly. So the last act kind of told, that one was funny, so we'll do something heavy. Or that one was heavy, so we'll do something sexy. And, we did like that. And the goal was to land the plane by midnight. As we said. And that land is a loose word. It can be a crash. At the end of the day, that experience made people comfortable, but never as good because they were drinking and they weren't preparing. Yeah. But it was off camera and it was good fun. But it was not a realistic simulation of the theatrical experience where you're backstage. I hate that moment of, I try not to put on my costume till right before I get on stage anymore. Because that thing where I'm dressed, I'm waiting, and they're out there, and I'm just like, I hate that feeling. I bounce off the walls because my moment, I need to be in a good place.
Yeah.
I need to be under, me personally, I need to be under a little bit of pressure. Not stress.
Right.
Pressure. This brings out good things in me. I think you just need to put yourself in a position where you know I will be on at this time, doing it this way, on my terms, and you'll do fine. I also think there's merit in going somewhere where no one knows you. Find an improv night that's so far off the map that you're not going to bump into someone who knows you, because part of it is that thing where you're like,
yeah,
am I still state of the art, or am I being compared to my friends? I like performing for strangers, even now.
I prefer that too. I tend not to announce when I'm doing an open mic so that...
Well, and it's a mix, because on one hand you should be able to perform for your friends, but I always find that my friends can't see past me. I have a cadre of people who know me, or worse, I did a show for 5 years where I played a version of myself that is a heightened version of myself that is nothing like the real me, but is also nothing like what I play now. Getting those people to see me in another way was very difficult. And that's a challenge.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things I'm stressing out personally about the show we're about to do is, I spent the last 2 years not speaking on stage. And I want to reintegrate the ability to speak. Not because I feel I need to, but because I had it pointed out to me that, you know what you call a person who can talk, who doesn't? They're either screwing with you, which is incongruous and disingenuous, or they're mute and they have a mental problem. And you can't leave that out there. There are times where silence is important and powerful. There's also times where, what the hell was that? Is the thing you say. And so there's this sort of natural finding of that. Trying to reintegrate that. I'm also worried that I'm now getting on stage at the beginning of the show and speaking and setting up the tone of the show, which is exactly what I used to do. I'm afraid I'm going backwards. And people won't see me in any other way. And I hate that. But at the end, you don't get to choose how they see you. You get to present what you want. And what my lab process is an acknowledgement of that truth. There are 3 things in play. What is in your head? When your ideas combine with your physicality, your voice, your presentation, your skills, how those two meet. And then there's the third layer, which is what the audience sees. And what we do in the lab is we set down an audience of trained people. Watch you. And they give you feedback. They go, no, we don't want to know your process. But we see X plus Y, A plus B equals C. We see C. We saw the presentation of B, but there was an incongruity. So perhaps either the problem was in B or was in A.
Yeah. Either
you had an unclear view of what you were trying to do, or something in your technical presentation. Where can we make adjustments so we get the presentation that we think you're after? We see this thing. And so a lot of times we were working in a very subjective way. You can't do the work. You can't do clown without an audience. So we train our performers to be a good audience. And so they sit there and they look at you and they go, okay, you read, is your intent to be angry? And you say, no, you're reading angry. We take, if it's obvious, or maybe we point out that we see anxiety, we see something, and it helps. It really helps when you start thinking of it as there's nothing wrong with me. There may be an incongruity in my presentation I need to adjust, as opposed to there's something wrong in your... It's a very useful process when you have people that are protective of the process and theatrically minded, and they go, okay, we're going to help you find this. And sometimes I find that to me it's the subliminals and the small body language cues that are the most dramatically affecting. I've seen, when I was hosting the variety show, was my boot camp to learn a lesson I teach, which is that I introduced something, we did the math once, it was like 4,000 or 5,000 acts, all said and done, that I introduced in the course of 5 years. And there's one show that was all night, 2 shows, because we had a little dirty show after and then clean show during. So 7 acts early and maybe 15 at night. So I made introductions, and then I watched all of these, and I realized some of them were repeats. It doesn't matter. Of the acts that were good, of the acts that were bad, 90% of the acts that weren't great or necessarily bad material. There was a glitch in the presentation of it. And it was specifically early, little things that created an incongruity that built on itself. It built anxiety, or it built distrust or distaste. Little things like that. The acts that were really good weren't necessarily the best act, but they had the charisma, they had the technique of presenting the work in a real way. And then you'd see guys who were tired, they were good showmen, but they were not in the room, and it was worse because you could see them going through mechanical motions of being very good at their job but not caring.
Yeah.
And you go, oh, that's the thing that'll make me leave the theater. I don't care if you're bad at it as long as you care. That person who's scared and says hi, I like him, her, love that person. I'm cheering for that person. For a lot of people who are trying to take the stage, I think they don't believe in themselves. They're hearing the voices of everybody else who's ever told them something negative, and you're just trying to get through it. And I think that's a wrong approach. I remember I was sitting backstage at my very first Circus Freaks show, and I was backstage going, what if I this, what if that, what if they don't like me? And this guy, he's not with us now, Big Bill Edwilson. You don't get a name like Big Bill unless you're building a train. Big Bill works with last chance at-risk autistic and violent kids because he can pick 4 of them up and separate them in a fight. He gets 2 in the elbows and 2 in the hands, and he's just mad. The purest heart you could possibly imagine. He says, Russ, and he puts his tree trunk down on me. And I like to pretend he has like a big British accent, but he doesn't. He's just like a good old boy. He said, Russ, we've had a problem in the theater. And he's like, Russ, these people, they showed up. They bought a ticket. They're not here to see if you suck. They're not thinking, God, I hope he sucks. They're thinking, man, can't wait to see. Now go out there and play with your friends. It changed my life. This very notion that I could have a non-adversarial relationship with my audience. And stand-up comedy, unfortunately, breeds a lot of adversarial.
Oh, yes, it does.
Stand at the cannon and speak and spit. Yeah. Oh, it's terrible.
Which, the times for me where it's most beautiful is when, not that I don't care, but that, like, I'm playing, like, I may be hanging out backstage with my friends, we're laughing, we're joking, whatever. It's my time to go on. I'll be right back, guys. And I
that's
do my...
Well, the only danger in that, and this is in my world, if you walk out grinning, we wonder what's funny backstage. Because if I'll show you this is really useful. Boy, this is funny. All right, watch the difference. Versus, it's about you now.
Yes.
Such a little thing. That's the stuff I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's the stuff that fascinates. And that's with me holding my breath because I didn't want to get too technical. Because breathing matters.
Yeah.
But entrance, so subliminally, we tell people from the very first step how we feel about the whole thing. A guy by the name of Apollo Robbins. Apollo Robbins is a pickpocket. Fascinating guy. He's a pickpocket. And he now does like talks on neuroscience and behavioral studies, and he does Vegas shows because he decided with his skill set there are only two job descriptions. One is to go to prison eventually, and the other is to hire prisoners to make documentaries and write papers on neuropsych. So he went that route. And he said that research shows that there was a cognitive bias where people make within the first, they used to think it was the first minute, but it's actually like the first 15 seconds.
Yes.
People make their cognitive bias in 15 seconds, and then everything that supports it, they overvalue, and everything that negates it, they undervalue. The other part of that is, though, if there's not enough supporting evidence, they subliminally feel incongruity. So the thing is, they go, this guy's an asshole, and then the guy's nice. Maybe everything he does is nice, but his entrance says he's an asshole. I've decided in the first 15 seconds he's an asshole. But I don't know why. So now I don't trust him. All on a subliminal level in the first 15 seconds, he's ruined it for himself.
Yeah.
And it was all because he didn't seem pleased to me. Maybe he wasn't smiling. Maybe the smile was in the wrong place. Maybe the breathing. So the argument is, why not stack the deck? As a performer, why not choose to make all of it work for you? If I know my story, is to be poignant and lovable. Why not stack that from the beginning?
Right.
And so we work our way backwards through our routine and let it ripple through. So every choice we make supports it. So if our character on stage is irreverent, and we have the entrance that's irreverent, and then you say something irreverent, and then you build on that, by the time it's like, oh, that lovable, irreverent guy, we like him. Yay, we like him. If you come and you flash nice, we think you're nice even if you say something terrible. And you can support it.
Yes.
That's the stuff that I'm fascinated by in the work.
I need to go back through my set and just my whole, that just throws everything on its head, and I'm just like, I need to, we're going to go back up on stage on Tuesday.
Oh, wow.
Again, so.
Monday I will be teaching in the lab, so if you want to come and hang out from 7 to 8, we teach a little.
7 to 8. I will see what my schedule looks like on Monday.
Every Monday and Wednesday, what we do is from 7 to 8, we do Clown Gym, which is theater and tech, and then we do open juggling practice and juggling and crazy circus skills, and stilt walking and acrobatics.
Are y'all going to be busy? What is that?
What is that?
On the 3rd of July.
Yeah, we're probably teching for the show. Why?
Okay. Because I know that I'm going to be off that day. I was like, that would be an amazing Monday to come.
Well, you said the 3rd?
Yeah.
Monday, we're taking that whole week off because here's the thing.
Yeah.
We screwed up.
Do I need to stop?
No. We screwed up our week because we had made our summer schedule before we ever decided to do a show at the Margo Jones. Because that was, like I said, that came up randomly.
Yeah.
We are working 4th of July at Fair Park. I am teaching stuff in Aubrey, Texas on the day of one of the shows. We're all over the place.
Wow.
So what we're doing is we get possession of we're supposed to get possession of the theater on Tuesday, which is the 4th, but of course the holiday and us working at Fair Park, we won't get possession of the theater till Wednesday. So we're doing all of our pre-work, and then we're basically living in the theater until showtime.
Wow.
So yeah, every spare minute is beaten down. And the Monday we just decided, well, we've got the gig on Tuesday, which is like an all-day body beater, so we're just gonna chill out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I canceled the gym and the labs that week because of the show. And tech weeks are always hard. We used to not cancel anything, and now I'm like, it's too much because we have a 9-person cast. Yeah. Oh, 8 or 9, depending on how you count it. I can't say too much. But it's a big cast, so we have a lot to tech. So yeah, we have to.
I totally understand, and I would definitely love to meet some of those folks. And
I think coming out to Evil, which is the once a month, which we'll pick back up in August. I think Evil is probably the best because it's not the gym environment; it's a much more controlled environment. That's a good environment to come and get a first taste of working with me as a teacher. What I'm looking to do is build some workshops where, and that one I do, like I said, it's cigar box. Throw 20 in the cigar box and just get on with it. I'd like to do more structured workshops with groups. I'm real good working with groups and teaching, and I would love to do a little boot camp on performance theory. I had so much fun doing it, and we did such good work, and everyone is reported in. It's funny. At first, there were some people like, oh, I'm going to use this immediately. And then there were some people that were quiet, and I was like, oh, I didn't get to it. And a month later, I heard from them 2 months later, 6 months later, 3 months later. Everyone's checking in with me saying, God, this just leveled me up. I just leveled up. And it's because it is a practical perspective and on the work that people don't have. But more importantly, most people have never encountered. And yet, you think about this, where do most people learn how to perform?
At home in front of their parents.
Which is not a real technical place to learn.
Right.
And then we learn from watching other performers who may or may not have ever learned anything formally. And then we pick up a gag and we try it, or we have anxiety, and that stuff gets into our workings, and we never really get formalized training. And so I think that's why I have a great respect for people who have been through, whether it's an improv program or a clown program. And, I admit that I looked at my resume the other day because I was filling out paperwork for something and they needed my CV, which is not a thing. As a freelancer, having a CV is a stupid thing. But I have an education section. And I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked when I list all of the workshops I've taken and all of the classes I've taken and all of my great teachers. And I'm like, I am woefully overqualified to be a stupid person. By paper, I mean, of course I know nothing, but I realize now, it's like, yeah. And that's the thing that separated me from a lot of people. Plus, I have 5 years of working a show that taught me everything. Of hands-on weekly lab. Most people don't have that experience. Unless they get on a big show, and the only way they get on a big show is if they have the skills in the first place. I got lucky.
Sorry, my girlfriend went, but I'm still alive.
Ditch her. Dead in a ditch, the clown ate me. Ate my brain.
Yeah, he says I taste funny.
Oh, it's the worst joke.
I know. It was right
two
there.
Clowns, two cannibals eating a clown. One of them asked the other, does this taste funny to you? Oh, it's awful. But yeah, I think the perspective gap is there because you learn legitimate things, but it's not hand waving. There's legitimately. I mean, I can in a couple of hours give you something that will upgrade your performance, and then if you gave me 2 of those sessions or a week, but you have to choose your battles also because you have to look at when I was building workshops, you have to look at what do people already have, what are they coming in with, what things am I going to be beating my head against, and go, okay, like I'm teaching a children's theater. They wanted me to do a clown workshop for teenagers. And I'm like, clown is complicated. It's not you have to have a deep understanding of irony and nuance. And I argue pain, but that's me, not clown.
Yeah, that's a level that you need to have life experience.
Well, most clowns need life experience to understand the human condition. You have to have been a person for a while. Yeah. That's why clowns, not necessarily young. But I hit upon what to teach them. And so I sit down, and I sit down with every group I'm going to teach, and I think for a moment, I go, what is it that applies that I can help them where they are get to the next place they might be going? And that's a lot of what I do. And that's why when people say, well, what do you teach? Or how does your workshop, do you have a synopsis? And I go, sometimes I have a synopsis. Sometimes I do a lot of hand waving. I usually have a plan when I walk in the room. Usually. Only twice have I not had a plan. Those were great days.
Yeah.
One of those was that one where I had to throw everything out because we were in space. It was a great workshop. I told everybody at the end of the night, I said, look, it's a great workshop. This is what I was going to teach. This is what we did. This same thing. That was a cool moment. It was like taking them behind the scenes. Yeah, I think the number one thing that people struggle with is at first whack, and I have trouble remembering this, is anxiety. Because now, I'm performing all the time.
I do have bouts of anxiety, especially when I work, because, if you throw me, I go to different events, and if I'm surrounded by, 1,000 people or whatever, I'm one of 1,000 walking around in this room.
No good.
I'm no good. But if I go with, okay, I'm here at, I'm here for an event for say it's the Boys and Girls Club. And, okay, the executive director is this person, their secretary is this person, or this person. Okay, I have to go through, this crowd and try to find those people, touch those hands, let them know that
But don't you understand what the difference is? You just said it.
It's purpose and drive.
You have a job. Yeah, you got something driving you.
Yeah.
Every time I take the stage, I have to have a job. I have to have a reason for being there.
Yeah.
I have to. It can be as simple. I wrote a 12-minute act. It's in the show. This show. The one at Margo Jones.
Yeah.
I wrote a 12-minute act that was built, and it's shorter now. But it was built on the need to move the crash mats, the gymnastics mats.
Yeah.
6 feet. I have to move it 6 feet in the show. So it's in the stage directions. It says, move crash mat to this position for the next act. Okay. We could argue a tech could do that for me. Or for someone else. It's not even for me. But I saw this and I said, I want that. And at first it was a little joke. Just a little quick. And then it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And finally it's like a whole production involves half the cast. Because it got good enough. I'm like, oh no, everybody has to be in on it. And it's really spectacular now. When it's all done. It's very stupid. I'm very proud of it. It's very stupid. I got letters about it. Like angry letters about it. So that was also great. because my make-believe was so good it upset someone. I don't want to say too much because it's funny. Yeah. It's funny.
I definitely want to try to come out.
But the point I was making about this thing was it's a job. I had a job to do. When I know where the rails are, it's easy to improvise.
Yeah.
It's easy to play because I know that as long as when I'm done, the job's done, then I get out. Yeah. A to B. Most of what I teach is the phrase A to B. It's a simple, stupid idea. But that's why your anxiety came. Yeah. The best performer realizes that you can make, eventually, once you get used to being thrown, the clown has specific training in being, like I said, in the shit. You learn, oh, that's the feeling of A. Okay, I'll go find A now. It's around here somewhere. No problem, we'll find, there it is. There it is. Now we just got to get to the other thing. Yeah. That's a difficult skill set. But if you take anyone with no preconceived notion of that concept and you throw them there, of course their brain seizes up. Of course they sweat out. They freak out.
Even for years and years it seems like I've been going through life training for improv before I started taking improv.
Sure.
And then, I'm like that class clown, I get in a situation, I'll turn it, make it funny or whatever. And, or I'm always trying to find the joke or the button or whatever in a situation. But, oh my God, I have not had that feeling when they tap me, they're like, maybe we'll get you in tonight.
I can explain it in a sentence. The problem is the sentence comes with a preamble that's about 3 hours. Which is something I said to somebody the other day, and I kind of got a really dirty look about this. I was talking to,
I don't know if I have enough battery.
Oh, it doesn't matter. I was talking to an aerialist. I was just telling you a story. Yeah. I was talking to an aerialist instructor, not one of mine. She's an instructor. And I said, I think I know what's wrong with most aerial performances. And she said, really? That's interesting. And, I got her attention. I said, yeah, and I can explain it like a sentence. And then I stopped and I said, and it came, she said, well, what is it? I said, the problem is I think it's going to take about 3 hours to explain all the words in that sentence. All the concepts loaded in the problem. And she got mad because I basically told her, I'm not going to tell you, but that's not what I meant at all. It's because I had an epiphany about the nature of physical performances, but it was dependent on so much. I think it's also true in it's about the emotional disconnect. And that's the thing. And it was about something physical. In that case, it was about something physical. But here what you have is you have a thing where you know what your job is, but you have an emotional disconnect about when it's time to go off. Yeah. There is nothing wrong with stacking the deck in your favor. There's this thing where we're supposed to be good in adversity. Adversity's going to happen, man. Yeah. That's going to happen. Where the good comes is when we have prepared ourselves to win. What do they say about athletes who visualize the success? And then they do it. Yeah. Stacking the deck. I have friends of mine, we perform, and I have headphones in before shows sometimes. Before this one particular show, because the pacing was very different than my own. And it was very uncomfortable for me. And at the end of the show, he says, I thought you didn't like me anymore. I thought you were mad at me because we shared a dressing room and never talked. You always put in your headphones. I said, I had to give myself the distance in order to find the loneliness of the character. Because the character was alone in the world. Yeah. I said, I had to be alone. I love people. But I have to be alone in order to feel that wistfulness for just a moment. I had to give myself that in order to feel it. And I said, okay, boom. And then it was great. The night I didn't, it was a train wreck. And then I, midway through, figured out, oh, that's missing. I was able to make adjustment. I don't know if the audience really picked up on it or not. It doesn't matter. I knew. Yeah. So you just stack the deck.
Cool. How did y'all meet?
Her?
Yeah.
The story I tell is that about 9 years ago, a couple friends of mine were getting married. They threw an engagement party. I was the officiant. He was the jeweler. There was this man I didn't know with a bowl. wandering around the party, making it hover, and I just followed the whole night.
That is not
and said hi eventually.
Yeah, that's not the version I tell. The version I tell is I was having a very bad night. This hot girl walked up to me. So hot. She was a woman. I thought she was so hot I called her a girl. I mean, it was that bad. She said hi to me. I proceeded to drink a bottle of vodka and try to be charming. It worked out. That's pretty much the story. It's the same story.
As now, there wasn't a lot of talking while you were with the contact sphere. And so it was this...
So just this silent...
Quiet,
apparently I just shut up and I got myself a girl. There's the answer to your question.
Eventually you said, okay, there's this thing we do in the park every month.
Oh, yeah! And then you started showing up to that. We used to do a thing in the park called Spin Fest, and we would get everybody together, we just hang out and juggle. This was before we had any aspirations of being a circus or any of this. We would just get together and juggle. And we would do that, and it was fun. It was innocent fun. It got found. It wasn't actually my invention. It was somebody else's invention. They wanted to, at the time, the poi spinning and fire spinning and stuff was really tied into like the rave culture, and they didn't like the rave culture. They liked the spinning part. So they went to the park and they did that without all the trappings of the rave culture. And I just sort of showed up to that, and I kind of got involved there, and because people were doing stupid things, and I did stupid things. That was nice. And then they actually just sort of up and fell out and left me with a community. I was like, well, I guess by attrition I'm in charge. Which, there's a lot of that. Again, meritocracy, I suppose. Yeah. But I came in and I had already been helping and doing it. And at one point we got to a place where that group, the core group that was sort of running that community, was doing demos, performance demos, we call them. And they weren't shows yet, performance demos. And somebody said, we'd like to pay you to come out and do a gig. And we were like, well, and I said, just sitting around a table full of people talking in your apartment. I said, well, and I preface this, do you know the game Nose Goes, where everybody touches their nose?
No.
I didn't either, and it's important to the story.
How do you play? Okay,
so basically you play like this. You go, okay, nose goes, whoever loses has to do the dishes.
Okay.
Yes, that's how it goes. So you get it? You want to try again? Nose goes, has to give me $5. You have to give me $5. Okay. So everybody, and you don't have to say it. Basically, right. The last person when the thing is said, if somebody starts, everybody has to finish. And I didn't know the game. So I said, look, if we're gonna have a circus that takes a check, someone's gonna have to be in charge of that train wreck. Somebody's gonna have to administrate it. Somebody's gonna have to call the shots. It can't be just a collective of people sitting around a table. It is somebody at some point. Yeah. You have to have, if not, and I didn't say like a boss, a leader at that point. I didn't have anything so conjured. Just somebody ultimately has to be the custodian of authority. Somebody has to basically be left holding the bag. And everybody went and touched their nose, and I went, what does that mean? And I realized what I did not know was at that moment, that was the vote that put me in charge of the Circus Freaks. They later came around and pointed out that I'd been doing that job for a year already. But it was a very funny moment that stayed with me. Literally, I didn't know how to play Nose Goes, and therefore I have a circus. And I'm convinced that story has never made public airwaves, like on a podcast or something, because it involves a physical gesture that you can't see. So it's like, not it. It's a whole table full of people says, not it, and there it is. And that is genuinely how I ended up in charge of the Circus Freaks.
That is a beautiful story.
It's ridiculous. I lost a bet. There's two things. One, I lost a bet is a funny way to say it, but more metaphorically interesting, I lost a game. As a clown, I played a game and lost, and therefore ended up in charge of a circus.
That you didn't even realize that you were playing to begin with.
Most importantly, that I wasn't even specifically invited to. That moment encapsulates the world of clown in a way I love. But yeah, so okay, and the difference is I took it seriously. I was ready for a change of career anyway. I was kind of rolling through one career. Within a couple of years, I was working more as a circus performer than I was in my job as a jeweler or sculptor, and I kind of was like, that's because I really don't want to do that job anymore. And I happen to have gotten out at just the right time. The economy, the world was falling apart there. And so I switched gears. The next thing I knew I was already doing this full time, but then I announced it, made lots of people mad, sold out the last of my final collection of work, and I've been doing this ever since, stupidly. Yeah. We've been on adventures and studying and learning and doing. Thinging. I like thinging. We'll do thinging more.
Thinging and dancing.
No one ever asked that question. How we meet, how we end up with a circus. I think there comes a point where you have enough of it in the room. I call it the reallys. You go, well, I'm a clown in a circus. They go, when you first start, they go, really? And then they go, really? And finally they go, really? And then they say really in a way I don't have the tone for. It basically means, that explains everything about your personality. I get those a lot. But yeah, I think there comes a point where you're embedded enough in the thing you're doing that some people stop asking that question. How did you, I lost a bet. And it was very funny to meet people who had never met me before, and they asked, how did you get me? I said, how'd you end up in a circus? I lost a bet. I failed. Right into it. I've been here ever since. It's a great story.
That's the podcast. Again, I want to thank Russ Sharek for sharing so much of his time with me and coffee. We got kind of loopy there while we were talking, but I always thoroughly enjoy talking with Russ. Again, they still have 2 more dates. If you're listening to this as I'm posting this, they have 2 more shows, July 8th and 9th at the Margo Jones Theatre in Fair Park. Those tickets are, again, available at circusfreaks.org. And you can check out other episodes of this podcast and more information by visiting avertyoureyespod.com. And there you'll have links to everything that you need to listen to the podcast via iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, Google Play, iHeartRadio. We've actually just launched our YouTube page. I'll have a link in the description on the Avert Your Eyes podcast website for how you can get to that. And I'm hoping to do some creative things with that in the future as well. We've also got links to Facebook and Twitter. You can keep the conversation going with me by using the hashtag AYEPod. You can keep the conversation going by using the hashtag AYEPod. Again, thank you so much for listening to the Avert Your Eyes podcast. I'm your host, Michael Gibson Jr., and until next time on the Avert Your Eyes podcast, consider yourself warned.